So, in case you were wondering, it is May 12th. Happy Mother's Day to all of you who are a mother and have a mother. I think that's most of us. This is the Excel conference, learning from each other, building academic provider community partnerships for research. Or if you just came for the free food, that's fine as well. So my role today is to keep things on track. I'll be your host for the evening. Make sure we get everyone in and out on time here. And of course to welcome you and thank you all for taking the time to be here on a Monday. I'd like to start with the agenda, yes, but before that I wanted to thank a lot of folks who made today possible. And all of you who are here, first of all, thank you for being here. All of you who are part of the program as program leads, as workshop leads, folks that we've drafted into a variety of different duties, thank you so much for doing that as well. Our core team, the workshop folks who put this together, really deserve a lot of appreciation. And Cynthia Callahan, Kristen Isaacs, Lee McCormick, Kathy Kolb. Our linchpin in all of this has been Jen Passarella, who's our program coordinator for Excel. And I'd like you to just join me, please, in giving them a round of applause. Thanks so much. I'm not going to provide extensive bios for the folks up here, and you have an extensive program for that purpose, and all the information you need to know about our speakers is right there. We'll provide brief introductions to keep things going on time here. This is what our program looks like for the day. And if you look in your program book, this program is on the inside as well, on the first couple of pages. So after the welcomes, Dr. Rosenthal is going to give an overview of the community engagement and outreach component of the Excel program. We're going to hear from our morning keynote, Dr. Dan Ford. We'll have some invited guests introduced by Dr. Weintraub. We'll have our break, and then we'll come back for the panels. The panelists are going to be right here, and that'll be led by Dr. Bittner-Fagan. Dr. Jenkins is going to moderate the second panel, and then we'll have perhaps, you might be looking forward to this as the best part of the morning. Well, maybe, we'll see. That's lunch. And after a lunchtime keynote, we're going to go into our afternoon workshops. Now, until the afternoon workshops, we'll be in this room. The workshops are breakouts, and they're concurrent breakouts. We have the room set up. Dr. Raymer is going to give you a background for the workshops as well as the rooms, and that'll happen in towards the afternoon. A couple of the workshops will be in this room. The other three will be down the hall. In case you were wondering why you only have half an hour for lunch, actually our keynote speaker is a lunchtime keynote speaker. He's generously agreed to speak over our chewing, and the half an hour is just for us to get lunch from the back, head on back here to the tables, and then we'll continue with the program at that point. I've been instructed to let you know one of the most important features is that the restrooms are down the hall, in case you were wondering. And directly related to that, coffee will be available all day. So that's in the back as well. So I was thinking a little bit about translational research, and you'll get more of an academic overview of this later on, but in very simple terms, this is a little bit of what it really means to me and some of the work I've been fortunate to be involved in. A gentleman up there is working on something in the lab. It directly translates into a vaccine, an oral vaccine given in the field over on the right there. Anyone care to venture who the guy is in his lab at the University of Pittsburgh in 1952 up there? Yep, a good guess. Yeah, absolutely. Jonas Salk, developer of the Salk vaccine for polio, the first vaccine at that time. This is what translational research sort of looks like, bench to bedside application in the field. This is what translational research looked like to me when I was working with the World Health Organization in Afghanistan and Pakistan many years ago. Just vaccinated these two little girls, given them their polio drops, and this was a really nice outcome of that. Unfortunately, this is where some of it broke down. I had thought that I would have seen my last case of polio many, many years ago. It was not to be. I'm examining a little girl here who turned out to have polio. One of the last cases of polio on the planet. We thought we still have it ongoing. So why do we care about this in Delaware? What does this have to do with the spectrum of research? Well, discoveries sometimes help accelerate these field-based programs, and certainly in the case of polio they have, but this was just from a few days ago. You may have seen this or heard about this on NPR or the news channels. WHO sounds alarm on the spread of polio. We still have polio in the world. We have 3 endemic countries. We have outbreaks of chickenpox happening in our country because of failure to vaccinate. So effective science is outstanding. Effective application is great. Uptake by the community really matters a lot. And a lot of what we're going to discuss today is about that partnership between science and community. The good news is, at the end of the day, scientific research really spurs many of the advancements that we're going to see in health. This is a quote from Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India in 1947, when he said that it's science alone that can solve the problems of hunger and poverty, of insanitation and illiteracy, of superstition and deadening custom and tradition, of vast resources running to waste, of a rich country inhabited by starving people. And I think if you look closely enough at this, you'll see parts of our own experience in this as well. And I think that's where scientific research has to be brought to bear. The closing remarks on this, I think, should come from the NIH, since they're the ones responsible for and helping us fund this conference. Howard Gadlin, NIH Ombudsman, said, "Scientists are very much like people." And I hope today that as we have our discussions and our building of relationships and our talks with each other, ideas, great new research projects, that we remember this, that we're all people ultimately in this to improve the health of our communities, to do great research and apply that great research. So with that, I thank you very much. It is now my privilege to welcome Kathy Matt. Dean Kathy Matt is Dean of the College of Health Sciences at the University of Delaware. She's also the Executive Director of the Delaware Health Sciences Alliance. I work closely with Kathy on a number of initiatives, and she's generously agreed to say a few words at our opening this morning.
So thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. I really just want to take a few minutes to bring my greetings from the University of Delaware and also from the Delaware Health Science Alliance. I want to thank Omar personally for all the leadership that he has shown and the hard work that he's done in working with the Alliance and a lot of the projects that we've done together, and including all of the initiatives he's led in global health. And I think you see some just marvelous examples of the work he does, not only in terms of organizationally, but also right down at the front lines. It is a very exciting morning and day for all of you, and it really is an exciting time. Omar showed a quote from the NIH, and it reminded me, actually this is something I wanted to talk about, and it probably shows my age, but when we used to write and when we wrote NIH grants a long time ago, there was always a section where you had to talk about the implications of your work for populations and how this could be translated and really have an impact. And probably 20, 30 years ago when we wrote those statements, our thoughts really were that we would contribute to a general knowledge bank, and that knowledge someday would then be picked up and translated by somebody and would result in an impact that would change the lives of people. And so I think our work was really driven by the fact that we really believed, and very strongly, that creating that large scientific knowledge base would really have the impact. I think you fast forward to today, and you fast forward to the grant and the project that you all are working on and we'll talk about today. And it's really an amazing time, because what you have today is the scientists, the clinicians, the clinical scholars, the community, the people that are out there on the front lines, everybody together at the inception stage with the opportunity to really co-invent the great solutions. So talk about a way to really have an impact, do innovation, and really see that translated to make a difference to patients and their families. And so I think really that's what today is all about. And it really is just wonderful to see the interaction. I spoke with several of our guests who were here, and again, they, as I, am very impressed by the numbers that are coming out for this meeting today. And I think it is really reflective of what we talk about a lot in Delaware, that Delaware is a small community and that we really are all connected, and it really is meaningful to each and every one of us. And so we really do engage. And I think those great solutions really come about when the conversation works both ways and the conversation is in both directions. Again, we used to talk about from bench to bedside, and actually it's really bedside to bench and back to bedside, and it really is that continuous circle, and it's not even a bedside, it's actually a community, right? So it's community to laboratories and to academic institutions and clinical institutions, and then all the way back out again. So, today will be a very exciting day. Your list of speakers, your list of breakout groups, and the people who will be here, it will be a very, very productive day. And I'm just excited to be here this morning and be able to participate in some of this. The other thing that I wanted to just mention as well is we had recently a coordinating council meeting for the Delaware Health Science Alliance. And in the past, we have done pilot grants in areas of education and in areas of research. And one of the things that the coordinating council talked about this year is really as a coordinating council of the Delaware Health Science Alliance, which involves Jefferson and Nemours and Christiana Care and University of Delaware, is really talking as a council with representatives across all of those institutions and the community, talking about what do we want to strategically invest in so that we can have a much larger impact. So as you go through your day today, I would like you to just think in the back of your minds, you have the grant as a support system, but what are the things that the Alliance could do for you to really facilitate the work that you want to accomplish? How can we help you accelerate that? And what can the Alliance absolutely do to help you with these things? So please consider that, and I'll work with your leaders on this team, but I really would like to sort of indicate very strongly our support. And I think today is all about the power of partnership. And you really can do an amazing thing in an abbreviated time period. And so the time of discovery of how you make a vaccine to the time that it's delivered, hopefully in the future, doesn't have to be so long. And that's what really I think this program facilitates. So I really want to congratulate everyone. I know it was an enormous lift to get the grant in many ways, physically and mentally. And then it is a huge milestone to get it funded. And then now the work, in many senses, really begins. And you just have a great team together. And I really congratulate you. Wish you well on the day today. I think it will be a fantastic day. And please remember, you know, what can we do to help you? The other comment that I would just add also is that as we bring people together, we need to create spaces where that can happen. It can happen at each of our institutions, but I also want to encourage you. We have the new STAR campus, the Science, Technology, and Advanced Research campus. We've opened our first building, and we actually have a gala this Friday, and you are all invited to attend. You can just go on the College of Health Sciences website, click in, or just send me an email that you would be able to be there, and I would just be delighted to have you as a guest. It will really be a progressive dinner through the building, but it will be an opportunity for you to see clinics there, research areas, anatomy labs, teaching spaces. We really tried to create an interdisciplinary translational building that really has been architecturally created to facilitate that. So we have research labs down one side of the hallway and clinics down the other. So it really is a physical representation of translational research, which is what today is all about. So thank you so much, and best of luck today in your great ventures. And next, I would like to introduce Dr. Jay Greenspan, who is Chair of Pediatrics at A.I. DuPont Nemours Children's Hospital.
just a few words from Nemours. It's great to be here. It's great for all of my Nemours colleagues to be here, all of my colleagues from the Department of Pediatrics to be here. This is a very exciting opportunity for all of us, especially those of us in pediatrics. Just a quick story, Nemours came from the legacy of Alfred DuPont, who turns 150 years old this year. He's looking pretty good. And he really left his estate to ensure that the population of the kids of the state of Delaware and Florida received the best of care. And we've spent a long time and many years trying to ensure that once a child gets to us, that they receive the best of care. And I think with our partners throughout the state, places like Christiana, take care of a lot of kids with us, we've done a really good job. And when you get to our doors, when you're sick as a child, I think you get the best care in the world here in the state of Delaware. The problem that we've all recognized is that you don't always get to our doors in time, and we've spent very little time until recently on preventing you from getting to our doors. And so there's been a pent-up desire for my members of my department to explore this, to discover this, and we realize early on that we need a lot of partners. The state of Delaware, as an example, is not doing so great in terms of preventing illness in children. We have high rates of lots of things like prematurity and asthma and diabetes and obesity. And that starts, we're really talking about prevention. And there has not been a lot of time given to the blossoming scientists in our department to explore that. And this is really a huge opportunity. And so when this opportunity came up, for instance, and the team from the research team that this has spawned asked us who would be interested in having some of their time devoted to discovery and bench to bedside and really community to bedside research, we had a ton of applicants. And it just describes the pent-up desire to do a little bit more than just see patients quickly and efficiently once they come to us, that we really want to partner with all of you to find ways of preventing illness and to enhancing just about every part of the child's health before they get to our doors in an effort to prevent them from getting to our doors. And so we have a lot of interest, and this has been a golden opportunity already for us to take the time and reach out to partners to make the world better for the kids of Delaware and use it as an example for the rest of the country. This goes along with other opportunities we've had. We've had a great opportunity with the CMMI of the state. Similar partners have been developed, and personally, I've learned a lot from others that I've talked to. So one of the other main goals of this for me is just to develop partnerships with people. We have a long history at Nemours of having this beautiful building with a big wall around it with glass on top. And we've really not reached out well to the community. And that includes the community of scientists that you all represent. And so we know that every time we get to do that, we have this escalation of positive things happen, partners develop, more research happens, more discovery happens, and we learn from each other. And so this is a big thank you to all those who've put so much time into this grant. And I know I saw much of that going on because this is just a huge opportunity for the Department of Pediatrics, for all of Nemours, and for the state of Delaware, and for the kids of Delaware, and then for the kids translated to the country and the world to make the world a better place. And it really is going to start today. And so even at the table I'm sitting at, I'm going to learn a lot, and I'm certainly grateful for this opportunity. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Dean Matt and Dr. Greenspan. So it's my pleasure now to invite someone up here who I work very closely with, Dr. Mike Rosenthal. Mike is chair of the Department of Family and Community Medicine at Christiana Care, and he is director of the Community Engagement and Outreach component of the Excel program. So Mike, please join me up here. And yes, it is okay to clap at the beginning and the end. So join me in welcoming Mike up here.
Thank you, Omar, and good morning, everyone. It really is a warm and sunny day in Delaware, and I mean that in a lot of ways. Before I start, I also want to thank Omar, in addition to Jen Passarella, the CEO program coordinator, and the team that's been putting this together. Omar has worked tireless hours in helping arrange for the conference today, so special thanks to Omar, Jen, and the team from me. Yeah, please. We can applaud all day. It's a good thing, and I would hope that would happen, because as we get into this, I will do a few things in this morning talk. Number one, I will tell you, don't take notes. You can't keep up with it, but it's on film, and the slides will be on the website, so there's a way to catch up with what I'm saying. I have a lot of information. I will highlight it all. I put it on there because I knew it would be out there for information, and I'm going to follow a friend and colleague, a guy named Rich Wender, who says a lot of times people say you shouldn't talk too fast on slides, but keep people involved, keep them awake, keep it going. So I'm going to go through a little bit about the Excel program, a little bit about translational research, or maybe a little bit more, and then a case history, if you will, of translational research, a historical case history, and then some steps forward. So that's what's going to happen during the next 30 minutes or so, and I guess, put on your seatbelts. Get ready. Here we go. That's me, Mike Rosenthal. We are here to learn from each other in the broadest sense of the words, and I think that that's really where we should start. So why are we here is a quick question, or why we are here is more of a statement. United Health Foundation said in Delaware, guess what? In 2011, this is wording right out of our grant, right out of the Community Engagement and Outreach component. Delaware is, of all 50 states, 31st in obesity, 40th in cancer deaths, 25th in cardiovascular deaths, 41st in infant mortality, and 37th in premature deaths. That's not good. We're also here to think about research, and I want us to think again in a broad sense about information, gathering information through observation or what other ways we get it, and research, and it's highlighted in red for a reason, because it's a systematic investigative approach and building evidence. That evidence provides knowledge. The knowledge hopefully provides education. And a lot of times we think that education is enough. Just because we know something, we'll do something differently. But in fact, that's often not true. And we get stuck on that one. Well, we know something, so everybody will change, right? No. It takes personal change or system change to make a difference. And we have to figure out what the actions are to get to personal and system change. And if we can do that, we can improve health outcomes. And then we build new research and evidence, and then guess what? It recycles. We learn something more and we do it again. To me, that's the essence of research. How do we take research, systematic investigation, build evidence, react to that evidence, act on that evidence, change, and then put it back into operation, and then learn more and do it again? That's called continuous process improvement if you're in business world. In research, it means you learn built on what's been before you, and you keep advancing knowledge. Why we are here. I believe that everybody in this room, we wouldn't be here for today, is interested in research for better health and well-being of people, families, and communities. Whether you're an investigator, whether you're a community member, or anywhere along the spectrum between, that's an important statement. Maybe this will work if I hit the right slide. We'll try this one. So, why else are we here? Well, National Institute of Health about 10 years ago put out a roadmap, and we're part of that roadmap to transform the way biomedical research is conducted and to accelerate medical research. So that there are a couple of programs that have come out of that, the CTSA, Clinical Translational Science Award Program, and a Clinical Translational Research Program, of which we are a part, to create better research for extension, impact, and health. And the more important thing is to take important research findings and evidence and put them into an effect. In other words, the NIH was looking about 10 years ago, a little bit longer back, and said, we're not reaching enough people. It's too centered in some institutions or clustered around institutions. It's taking too long to get research evidence guidelines into practice and into implementation so that people really use them in their lives. We're not being inclusive enough in terms of diverse communities and diverse folks that are out there in the world because we see disparities in care and we're not paying enough attention to them. And we're actually not offering the broad opportunity to be involved in research and be a participant in research so that you can be up to date on the latest findings and advances in science that you might be able to be involved in. So the NIH said, we've got to do better than this, and they put out the roadmap, of which this program's a part. So, National Institute of General Medical Sciences, the IDEA CTR program. Quick overview, this program, this is a quick overview, and I'm not even going to go through all the details. It's about the infrastructure, as you can see in red, for clinical and translational research. The number is $28 million over 5 years, $20 million from the NIH, $5 million from the state, and the 4 institutions involved have also put up $3 million because they knew it would make it a more competitive grant if they put up their own money to getting this grant, $28 million total. Got a very high score in the outstanding range after a lot of years of working together and putting in this application. The NIH said this is an outstanding application with the potential for huge impact, We've got to make that work. It was announced in September. So the Excel program is made up of a bunch of components. There's an administrative core and what are called 5 key component activities, which are building and will integrate together to help develop translational research, which is a pilot grants program, mentoring education and career development core, research design, epidemiology, biostatistics, clinical research expansion and support, and this program, the community engagement and outreach program, which is very much about figuring out how we make this work across the broad community, and an evaluation core. Excel leadership, are you ready? So I thought it would be important to do some quick introductions this morning. So Stuart Binder-McLeod is the principal investigator for the whole project, and Stuart's been terrific in just herding a lot of wild cats and putting together the great application that it is. Stuart, if you would please rise for a moment. Say hello to everybody. We're looking to meet everyone today, and that's the reason for the introductions. Next on the list from the University of Delaware also is Tom Buchanan. Tom is leading the program coordination. Tom, if you would please stand and wave to everyone. Steve Couts from the Medical University of South Carolina is not here, but we do have Randall Davis, who's the project director representing Steve in the Medical University of South Carolina. You may wonder why we have the Medical University of South Carolina if we're sitting in Delaware. The quick one is that IDEA program that I just mentioned that we're under asks for 2 states that are in the lower half of NIH funding to apply for these awards. So we partner with South Carolina and Medical University of South Carolina, who's been tremendously helpful to us because they also have a CTSA award, and they've been working on that for about the last 5 years. So they've been a tremendous partner already in building the grant and getting it funded, and we look forward to great collaborations along the way. You'll hear more about that as we go. Bill Weintraub from Christiana Cares is the co-PI leading for Christiana Care. And Julie Bartold will be with us. I don't know. I haven't seen Julie yet. I don't think she's made it here, but Julie Bartold is the co-investigator from Nemours. There are also internal and external advisory committees that are listed on the program. I'm going to go to the next slide to save us a few minutes' time. Community engagement and outreach component. We have a lot of people listed for here, and we thank everybody for supporting this. Not everybody is on the grant. There are some consultants that we have. I'm not introducing everybody by name, but everybody from the CEO component that's here today, there's a list in your folders, has a blue dot, and we're interested in meeting everyone here today. It is a tremendous group to work with of talented people across 4 institutions, and just, you know, when you see someone with a blue dot, don't hesitate to talk to them, and we'll be looking to talk to all of you as part of our work here today. Community Advisory Committee, very important. As the NIH has developed these programs, they said, well, you want to reach more people. It's become more and more evident, as Jay was saying a few minutes ago, is how do we get more people involved in these types of programs, and how do we really understand what it means to develop research along with what's meaningful research for members of our community and to have more impact and reach. So the Community Advisory Committee is a key contribution to translational research and this Excel program. It's advisory both to the CEO component and Excel leadership team. Community engagement and outreach considerations across the research spectrum. We'll be talking about that in a few minutes. And the role of the CAC is incredibly important. It's going to provide perspective for productive approaches to solving health problems, reach people across Delaware with research information, and build connections for research in the broad community. And so it's not only integral, it's essential is what people are believing in terms of building translational research to the higher levels, which we'll talk about in a minute. I want to thank and acknowledge Devonna Williams. Devonna, if you would stand for a moment, please. Dr. Williams has been working in the Delaware community for more than 20 years. She's a graduate of University of Delaware and got her doctorate there in policy, and has been helping us in terms of advising us and helping us reach out to folks across the community. And now we also have several, I don't know if everyone's here, but we have 17 Community Advisory Committee members. It's just getting going. But if you're a Community Advisory Committee member, you've got a ribbon on that says your Community Advisory Committee. We'll invite you to stand for a moment, let people see who you are, and then during the day, people may be recognizing your ribbon and talking to you. So thank you if you're a Community Advisory Committee for serving and for doing that. And it's a very important role. And if you see people with the Community Advisory Committee members, their role in terms of building connections across the community becomes very important. They become representatives and conduits for advising us on research and for disseminating research findings. So that's why they're being recognized here with ribbons today. And please make a time to just say hello if they're here and you see their ribbon. Specific aims for the Accel program, important to review quickly. Develop infrastructure to facilitate growth and development of translational research, to develop outstanding clinical and translational research programs, and a key specific aim of the whole program is to develop model community engagement outreach programs that promote health and wellness to a diverse population, written right in the grant. For our own community engagement and outreach, why are we here today? Well, it's about infrastructure and development that will build more research that actively involves the community, new community institution partnerships in clinical and translational science, and identify and educate and prepare community leaders, healthcare providers, institutional trainees, researchers, and scholars, basically our whole community, in the principles and practices of community-engaged and community-based participatory research. In other words, we're all there, we're all a part of this. So people have said, especially if you're not in the investigative side of things, what is clinical translational research? Quick introduction from my now favorite encyclopedia, the Wikipedia. People have actually checked on the accuracy, and it's probably as good or better than the Britannica is what I've heard. So clinical translational research aims to take findings from basic science and clinical investigation to useful practical applications that enhance human health and well-being, and the goal is to translate findings from research into practice and meaningful health outcomes. So it's just good research that means things to people and helps us find good health outcomes. That's it. It's not as complex as it might sound. This, from Scott Waldman and Andre Terzic about 4 years ago, Clinical and Translational Science, From Bench to Bedside to Global Village. Scott Waldman, a close friend and colleague from Jefferson, is the lead, as you'll see in the program, of the External Advisory Committee, and published this about 4 years ago about the continuum. And you may not be able to read all of the small print, but that's why the slides will be available. But the point is that there's a continuum, and a lot of times translational research has been talked about bench to bedside, which means that basic science level is T0, T1 is first in humans, T2 is clinical trials, but then people have added over the years and say, if we're going to reach out across our communities and make this have an impact, we want to get to T3, which is about dissemination and community engagement and comparative effectiveness and health services research and implementation research, all those things that help us learn what does it mean to take real research findings and have them work for real people in practices and in communities. And we want to get rid of that break. We want to see it as a continuum, very important. T4, very important because it's public health and prevention, and that means that research evidence can lead toward public health programs and toward policies. And at lunchtime, we'll have a keynote discussing about policy and building evidence to make policy change. And that becomes very important because the policies for health affect the health of all of us. As Omar had put up there, scientists are people too. We're all a member of our community, and the policies that affect us affect everyone. And it's really important to think about the evidence that can lead to policy. To be clear, this is about research. This project's about research. It's about building that evidence. We are not making the policy. There are others that we're working closely with. I'll mention Bettina Riveros, who's here representing the governor's office, and she's the governor's lead for health policy in the state and the lead of the Healthcare Commission. And the governor we expect will be here a little after 10 o'clock, as well as U.S. Representative Carney. But we're not the people doing that policy piece. We're the ones that are building the evidence, and then how does that evidence make policy that's important to us? I'm going to thank Sandy Hassink, who's done 95% of this slide, or maybe 98, and I've done 2 or 3 or 4%. But Sandy put this together because it's not just the levels of translational research, it's how do we integrate people? Again, I don't expect you to see it, but what Sandy started to do, and I feel that this is a work in progress, and I think Sandy would say the same thing, is that where do people line up in terms of their levels of research, but what you see is the arrows going back and forth and around across the spectrum of research. How do we build community engagement to involve all of us in thinking about research across the broad spectrum? It will take time. This will not happen overnight. There's a learning process that happens. Our friends from Medical University of South Carolina says, you know, it really takes a few years for everybody to see how this starts to integrate in. But it will happen, and we're all here today, I think Jay said, is starting on the process, and that's where we really have to go. So without all the details, for the different types of research, we've got different people involved across the spectrum. That's the quick view of that slide. Team science. The important things here, and this is from the Office of the Ombudsman at the NIH, and that's the slide that Omar put up from Dr. Gadlin, is at the NIH Office of the Ombudsman. Modern research methods have become more specialized so that the complexity of today's most pressing health issues and diseases is revealed, and collaborations among differing fields has become essential. So collaborations among different fields is essential for solving problems. Highlighted the words, it means we need interdependence, joint ownership, and collective responsibility between and among scientists, is what the NIH says. The boxed parentheses are mine, and their collaborating community, it makes them almost requirements. It's essential. And I'll thank Carolyn Jenkins from Medical University of South Carolina. She said, Mike, the really way to describe this is that the community members become part of the team for research. And the community advisory committee and reaching out. We have to think about the broad team and across, and that we're all there. Everybody has their function, their perspective, but the community becomes part of the team to help advise us on what's important and what can have impact. Teeter-totter balance puzzle. This is indeed one off the website. Smart Kit's up there. I reference everything so that when we put it out on the web, nobody says, well, you stole our picture. Seeking a dynamic balance to solve important problems is my wording. And I think that word dynamic balance. Think about a seesaw. Think about if you have too many people on one end, you're stuck. Too many people on the other end. And the fulcrum, the middle of that, is the CTR project, and specifically within that, the CEO component. How do we help create balance among investigators, researchers, community members, community organizations? What's that conversation about? And it's a dynamic process. Just think about being on a seesaw. It works best and it's the most fun when you have people pretty much equally conversing and figuring out how to do the balance, and you're going up and down. You're not just stuck, which I was because I was a thinner kid, with a heavier kid on the bottom, and you're sitting up there in the end and say, well, I'm not letting you down. That's no fun, right? So we want to think about this dynamic balance of how we work together and how we think together, and I think that that's a very important thing, and the CTR and CEO are right in the middle of that, trying to figure it out. We start today. People and partnerships, the broad spectrum across, investigators, researchers, providers of care, many types, community members in neighborhoods, community-based organizations, multiple communities or community-based organizations and coalitions, and the state. We all want to be on the same page and think about those partnerships. Research themes tested across our community and with community involvement, and also from things that we know and some of the risks I put up there before, and some of the things that helped us build the grant, and some of the things that you may notice that are in our workshops today. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, obesity, which also leads to diabetes and other risks, infant mortality, especially women's children health and family health, and disability, degenerative diseases, and rehab medicine. All of these things relate to key health risks and research themes across Delaware, which we need to be thinking about together. Okay, shift. Quick, want to see if you're still awake. What's wrong with this picture? Anything? At all? Just checking my time. We're right about on schedule. Here comes the flash drive part of it, flash through. Okay, This is from the mid to late 1930s. Camel cigarettes, a doctor, ear, nose, and throat doc, by the way, advertising this. Throat cancer, anybody? Lung cancer, anybody? This was what people were doing and paying for advertisements. And what do you think about that? What has evidence done? And it just happens to be 75 years, and you may notice that our lunchtime keynote, Dr. Quinlan, is from the Ochsner Clinic Foundation, and he pointed out to me when I said, I'm going to think about doing smoking as a case history example because it's 50 years since the 64 Surgeon General's report. He said, well, did you know that Dr. Alton Ochsner was one of the first people to write about this? So Dr. Ochsner and another kind of famous guy, Michael DeBakey, from New Orleans, in 1939, did this publication of this article, Carcinoma of the Lung, and they systematically reviewed. By the way, it was great going into the literature and finding these kinds of things, which is kind of the fun of science when you go back and you see the historical perspective and how it's developed over time. So 75 years ago, they did some investigative thought and conclusion based on evidence. It was observational. I'm going to spend a moment on that because a lot of times we think that there's only a certain kind of it's a double-blind, randomized, controlled trial is the best evidence, and therefore all the other evidence doesn't count. But what we've learned also is that observation counts, and systematic review and thought and drawing conclusions from all types of evidence can become very important. A quick aside, me as a second-year resident in 1981, September of 1981, I was giving a lecture on gay-related diseases, diseases for gay men, and a friend of mine in the audience said, well, what do you think about this New England Journal report that talks about this gay-related immune deficiency syndrome? And I said, that's really a case history, and it's only, I don't remember exactly, I think it was maybe 17 cases. And I said, we don't know much from case histories. It's not that much evidence-based stuff. It's not a randomized trial. I said, I don't think it's going to amount to much, right? That was AIDS, 1981, September, true story. And it was my naivete to think that only a certain type of research should count. I needed to learn that a lot contributes to our knowledge. So here we are from Ochsner and DeBakey. A number of theories have been advanced to explain the increase in pulmonary carcinoma, which they were observing in their practices and across the spectrum of cardiothoracic surgeons that were actually surgeons at the time. I don't know how many cardiothoracic surgeons they were, but DeBakey was one of them. And they looked through all their theories. It's a 50-page article, almost 48. And they looked at all sorts of different potential causes, but then they came down to this. Our definite conviction that the increase in the incidence of pulmonary carcinoma is due largely to the increase in smoking, particularly cigarette smoking, which is universally associated with inhalation. And then went on to say every one of our patients, with the exception of 2 women, was an excessive smoker. So they said that this is not an accidental finding, and they went through all those other reasons, and they concluded this based on observation. Based on observation, very important. So I'm going to jump ahead because people don't often think about this when they're saying, what's translational research? And I know people are wondering about what's translational research. So 1956, 17 years later, this theory had been out there. People are trying to find things. And in London, in the British Medical Journal in 1956, this is the second report. The first was in 1954, but they didn't have enough data to draw this conclusion yet. Lung cancer and other causes of death in relation to smoking, Richard Dahl and A. Bradford Hill. T3 community-based research. Why is this? You can't see it on the newspaper print, or maybe you can, on October 31st, 1951. That's how it started. There you are. On October 31st, 1951, we sent a simple questionnaire. I read this in preparing this talk, and I thought it's almost like the start of Moby Dick, Call Me Ishmael. It's one of the most important statements that you could find in terms of T3 community-based evidence research that's out there, because this led to a lot of further investigation about the dangers in smoking. So we have observation to T3 investigational research. Simple questionnaire. It wasn't complex. The most important thing is that these investigators said, you know what, we have to be thoughtful about what we want to ask, how we want to ask it, measure it well, report on it well, draw conclusions and report on it well. Essence of science. Are you a smoker? Have you ever smoked and given up? Have you never smoked? And by the way, whom did they ask? Remember that doctor that was smoking or telling us to smoke? 59,600 British physicians. They got over 40,000 responses. And they followed people for 53 months, starting on late October, early November of 1951, ending in January or so of 1956, and then they published this when they had enough evidence to go forward. They counted up the deaths and the causes of death, counted and analyzed in their conclusion. In this population, there has been a marked and steady increase in the death rate from lung cancer as the amount of smoked cigarettes increases. Pretty important finding. So we got to 1964, Surgeon General, many people know this, it's now 50 years since that, which was, by the way, 8 years after that report. From November 62 through January of 64, 7,000 scientific articles with the help of over 150 consultants said that, as you can see at the top, cigarette smoking is a health hazard of sufficient importance in the United States to warrant appropriate remedial action. They announced it on a Saturday because they were so afraid of all the uproar over this. But this was 50 years ago, so we've solved the problem of smoking in America, right? Not yet. Okay, takes time. Takes time, evidence, information, growth, more evidence, perhaps the policy, we'll talk about that a little later, to action to protect us. And you may remember that, somewhere around, I don't remember the exact year of the tobacco settlement. If anybody remembers, ask me. I'm sorry, I meant to look that one up. But there was this thing about the tobacco companies that were saying from 1956 and 1964 until the tobacco settlement, which was, I believe, the late 90s, correct me if I'm wrong, that actually there's no real evidence that cigarettes cause lung cancer and other diseases like cardiovascular disease and other cancers and pulmonary disease and things like that, right? Why? Because there was no randomized clinical controlled trial. Why? Because you couldn't take a bunch of people and say, here, smoke 2 cartons of cigarettes a day, and we'll compare you to the people that don't, because it's not ethical to do that. So the tobacco companies said, well, we don't really have the evidence. Okay? Really important to notice that, because some of the issues that are still coming up are about building the evidence, even if you can't do that. And then eventually, they had to settle because they were actually doing real nasty things like sneaky advertising and putting things that were getting more addicted in people to do the cigarettes even more, and so they had to settle. And then they had to support, so now you have legacy foundations that are going to be supporting research about tobacco. Okay? Very important to recognize that, because research to findings, to more research, to evidence, to policy, to protect us, so that within the last 10 years, we've seen great attention on secondhand smoke. There's no one smoking in this room. There's no one smoking around this campus, so that people that are bothered by secondhand smoke aren't bothered so much anymore. Really important. In the short period of time, I don't want to spend too much on this, I put up a bunch of examples of different types of research that relate to all levels of translational research, but relate to smoking. Opioids induce, while nicotine suppresses apoptosis in human lung cancer cells, would be T0 basic science. And basically, apoptosis means that bad cells go away, and nicotine suppresses that. So if bad cells don't go away, bad cells grow more, and therefore, does nicotine have an effect on lung cancer because of that? In this study about looking at receptors and antagonists for those receptors, could it help in preventing lung cancer? T1 example of translational research, control of behavior by intravenous nicotine injections in human subjects. So this is taking nicotine as a drug and saying people could voluntarily do self-administration and avoidance of nicotine and study their behaviors related to that. That's T1. T2, smoking translational research example, determinants of nicotine intake while chewing nicotine gum. Okay, anybody ever heard of nicotine gum to help stop smoking? Well, that would be a great example of T2 research. Taking gum that's been studied, tried some human subjects, and then try it in a number of subjects that have been smoking and see how it affects them. So in this T2 research example, which a lot of times T2 and T3 cross over, they all cross to some degree, not always cross, but T2 and T3 can be closely related, especially if they are in practice. They studied blood nicotine concentrations, daily intake, and extraction of nicotine from gum. And nicotine levels in intake were much lower while chewing gum than during ad lib smoking. So the gum helped the nicotine levels in the blood stay down and helped people get off cigarettes. T3, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that because the community engagement component is most invested, not in terms of all of the spectrum of translational research. We're invested in all of it, but in developing the T3 pieces, that's the community engagement components real emphasis in terms of our relationship to building research for the project. So here's one: a controlled trial of a sustained release bupropion and nicotine patch are both for smoking cessation, and it has conclusions. It was a double-blind placebo-controlled comparison. Bupropion alone or in combination with nicotine patch resulted in significantly higher long-term rates for smoking cessation. That's comparative effectiveness. Provider practice-based, increasing the efficacy of physician-delivered smoking interventions, 1991. Relative impacts, again a controlled trial, but this one's interesting because it was 196 medical and family practice residents in 5 primary care clinics in different residency programs, and they concluded that smoking intervention counseling provided by physicians and received by patients significantly increases the likelihood of cessation at 6 months. So is that important for care? Is that important for people and how they do in their lives? I think so. Is that one study enough? No. So here's another translational research, T3, built on Cochrane reviews. For those of you who don't know it, they do systematic reviews, and they do them over a succession of time. So this Cochrane review is from just last year, 2013. 42 trials over a 40-year period, 31,000 smokers. Does advice from doctors encourage people who smoke quit? Advice from doctors helps people who smoke to quit, period. So a lot of times when doctors, other providers say, you know, it's not worth talking to my patients, it doesn't get everybody to quit, but this is very important in terms of our providers' education, interactions with patients, building relationships. How do we counsel people? How do they learn what they need to do? Things that have been talked about more recently, motivational interviewing. How does this work, and how to get people to really act for better for themselves, improve health outcomes for themselves? What motivates behavior change to action, individual or system? Smoking, translational research, T3, community-based example. I especially like this one because it comes from a colleague who was recently at the Medical University of South Carolina, Jeanette Andrews, and has been an advisor to this grant and its development. The effect of a multi-component smoking cessation intervention in African-American women residing in public housing, published in 2007. Nurse-led behavioral empowerment counseling, nicotine replacement therapy, and community health workers to enhance smoking, self-efficacy, social support, and spiritual well-being. These findings support the use of nurse community health worker model to deliver culturally tailored behavioral interventions with marginalized community, because 6-month continuous smoking abstinence went down 27.5% in the intervention group and only 5.7% in the comparison group. So guess what? These kinds of things can work and help people in their lives, even if they're from places in our community that we might not expect to have an effect. Smoking translational research, community-based example. I just want to also note that Jeanette followed up that with what is called an RO1 or NIH, very high level of award, which we would like people to build to, a social ecological-based smoking cessation intervention in public housing, which ran up until 6 months ago, so we don't have the results of that yet. We'll be interested to hear what Jeanette has found. But it's community-based participatory research, which you'll hear more about today, multi-level smoking cessation intervention, the same types of cohort groups, African-American women in public housing. So we're at 2014, Surgeon General's report, recently released, and there was also an issue of JAMA that came out about the same time. 50 years later was a big celebration. So they were both released in January. And where are we now and where are we going forward is the questions to pose of this group getting together. We don't have the answers. Again, stay tuned for our lunchtime talk, which I trust Dr. Quinlan will be more than a little bit thoughtful and provocative in terms of thinking about how we can relate to system and policy change. That doesn't mean that we're doing it as part of this grant. It means we're building the evidence, but it does mean that we should be thinking about how do we build evidence and how do we work together to do that. What are our steps forward for Excel? I think it's important to appreciate clinical translational research at all levels, and that we all need to do that and explore opportunities together. We're going to have a couple of opportunities that are standardized through the Excel program, the Excel Pilot Grants program. I'll mention that in a moment. And what we're going to call the ACE Research Awards for Excel Community Engagement Research Awards. And also the reason for here today and the workshops is that these are the Pilot Grants program, the ACE Research Awards. Some groups and partnerships of people will get them, but not all. But we also want to start the seeds, plant the seeds for growing and developing existing or new research efforts through partnerships. That's why we're here today, in order to create research to make a difference. So the Excel Pilot Grant Program, for just a moment, it is already on the website, and the website is listed for you. Dr. Tom Buchanan, who you met recently, is the lead, and it's for all levels of translational research. approximately $80,000 per award, 1-year period. It's going to be highly competitive. It's a high dollar amount, and it's designed to be a stepping stone toward federal level research funding, and the goal is to develop researchers to become independent principal investigators to get R01 awards, as I just mentioned with Dr. Andrews. That's really important. So it's a high level investment in this. My understanding is there will be 8 awards in the next in the release that's currently on the website. It's already up on the website if you're interested in that. If I hit the right button, uh-oh. If I hit the wrong button, I get in trouble. Can anyone help me? I got it. I got it. Thank you for out of the blue. Terrific. Yeah, we're good. We're good. The ACE Research Awards, that was magical. Thank you. The ACE Research Awards, Dr. Heather Bittner-Fagan will be the lead, and it's intended for T3 levels of translational research, and we'll be looking at this. And it's for collaborative investigation, but earlier stages of development. We want to foster the development of partnerships, institutional plus community partnership leads, and it's going to be required to have a pairing of such. It won't be for as much money because it's early on to get development of research going. Pardon me, $20,000 per award, with 6 months of education and research project development and 6 months of implementation of a project, so approximately a year over that period of time. That release is not out yet. It will come out probably at the end of June, and it will be posted on the website, and the goal is to develop independent community education scholars in Delaware to conduct research that engages our broad community and lead teams that will compete in external funding. There's a picture of the website. It's up. We're going to encourage more and more people to go to it, and as it develops, it will be one of our other workshops today in terms of talking about marketing communications and how to use website information. And so I want to leave you with a research hypothesis, and I think it's an important one for all of us to consider. The Accel program will have a great impact on clinical translational research development in Delaware and South Carolina. It will demonstrate significant improvement in health outcomes for people, families, and communities, and it will be a highly successful model of innovative, creative, collaborative research involvement in team science across the spectrum of translational research. I really believe that to be true. It's been tremendous working as a group to get this up and going. To have everyone here today, I couldn't be happier to have us all thinking about these issues and moving them forward. It's an early first step. We've got a lot of work to do, and we really all, on behalf of the CEO component, on behalf of everyone that's been related to the grant, and hopefully you'll be feeling a part of this, on behalf of all of you, let's step forward together, and thanks.
Thanks so much, Dr. Rosenthal. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you your morning keynote speaker, Dr. Daniel Ford. Dan and I have known each other probably for longer than either of us would care to admit. I was a graduate student at Johns Hopkins in 1995, and I took Dan's just spectacular course in clinical epidemiology at the Welch Center at the School of Public Health and the School of Medicine, and we've kept in touch ever since. I'm so pleased he was able to join us. I'll give you a little bit of background about Dr. Ford. He completed his undergraduate work at Cornell, went to medical school at the State University of New York at Buffalo, and did his MPH at Johns Hopkins, his clinical epidemiology fellowship at the NIH, and his Osler internal medicine residency also at Johns Hopkins. He's presently Vice Dean for Clinical Investigation at the Hopkins School of Medicine, and most relevant to our work, he's going to share some lessons from his experience as the principal investigator of one of the oldest CTSAs in the country at Johns Hopkins, and as director of their Institute for Clinical and Translational Research. Please join me in welcoming my friend and colleague, Dan Ford.
Well, thanks again for inviting me. It's very interesting to be here at such a large meeting and looking at the promise of these translational research efforts. And we know, these are big, we have big goals for these projects. And I think part of part of our challenge is to how we go from these very broad concepts of across many diseases, advancing translation, and turning them into specific items that we can all work on and feel like we've made some progress. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we think the community expects of academic health centers. Are we meeting the community's expectations? How do we create those common expectations, and what models of community engagement are likely to make a difference? And just to